Welcome to Part 8. I appreciate your patience. Don't worry, this story will go where it needs to go in due time. Again, note that certain words are used because they are the closest equivalents to the ideas being conveyed. I respect the desire for longer stories, but unfortunately it isn't possible for me with my schedule. You may be happy to note that this part is longer than normal. Please enjoy. Human from Lost Sanity. Meet the Night Beast from Nyx. You may kill each other now. No. She wasn't some night beast. Not at all. Just a woman. A farm girl, really, with a meaningless title. An unimportant woman, hardly worth mentioning. Actually, Arenes silently cursed the warden as the creature. This man named Human blindly searched for her. She tried to secret herself into a corner of her cage with as little sound as possible. It didn't work. She could see the man's eyes tracking her, honing in on her hiding spot. Like the others, she doubted it could not see without the sun. But that seemed to make little to no difference. She made almost no sound, but it could hear her moving, maybe even breathing. She felt sure of it. The damn thing came from a place called Lost Sanity, too. With a name like that, the place could have been some fantastic underworld from an epic poem where beings didn't need sight to see. For the first time in weeks, her rage had fully given way to fear. She heard her cage opening, the clockwork engines deep within cycling. At any point from the time she had arrived in this cursed dungeon until now, she would have prayed for her cell to open. Now she fervently prayed for it to remain shut. "What the hell is a night beast?" Human asked, his eyes sightlessly shifting to the whining hinge. She gulped. It wasn't her, no, definitely not. No way. She began to wonder if one of her skeleton friends could maybe cover for her. Rewyther? Firmle? Twinargard? Anyone? None volunteered. Traitors, all of them. "Your doom!" shouted the warden. Doom? Doom? If they fought and she actually ended up killing this man, it would be an absolute miracle. Against one of her fellow dames, strikes to the head like the one she just delivered would have laid them all low to a woman, if even for just a moment. That huge man hadn't even lost his footing. She was hardly his doom. A better descriptor might be more difficult than average sparring dummy. She's a carnivorous killing machine with razor-sharp teeth, massive claws, and a taste for intelligent meat. We'll see who survives. All technically true, but really, what the fuck? Screamed Human, banging on the door with lightning-fast punches. From across the room, she could feel each impact in her bones. She didn't want to be anywhere near this creature. "You want me to fight some animal? What is this, some kind of gladiator blood sport? Why would you do that? What? I'm a simple man. A small, defenseless herbivore. You're just going to feed me to it? Why? I'll have no chance." It was bargaining. Or it knew she was listening and hoping to lull her into complacency. Either way, she was highly skeptical. "Ha! It's not any bigger than you," said the warden. "You might stand a chance." "Jesus Christ, mountain lions aren't any bigger than me, either," Human yelled back. "When I get out of here, I'll fucking kill you. Slaver scum." And now she wanted to be his friend. That might have been easier said than done. Sure, she could just march right up to the gentleman, introduce herself, explain herself and her terrible mistake, and hope for the best. It might work. The second rule of being taken prisoner was to find allies and unite with your fellow prisoners around the common goals of resistance and escape. They certainly had a common enemy, and the gentleman was surely intelligent enough to see that. On the other hand, this man could be extremely dangerous and might not even be in his right mind, if the name of his homeland meant anything. Not only that, but she could clearly see and smell that she'd drawn first blood. Though she would seek his forgiveness, he need not offer it, and without it he was entitled to strike her down. And at the moment he seemed rather angry. Arines pushed all fear and doubt aside. Only cooperation would lead to salvation. She took a deep breath and drew herself up to her full height and slowly strode toward Human. They were not going to fight for this sadist's amusement. They were going to clear this up like the lady and gentleman they were. She would first work up the courage to introduce herself to Human, and together, the pair would find a way out of this mess. For the first time since being taken, she began to feel a glimmer of hope. "If you get out of here, you can come find me, Human," said the warden from the wall. "I think the beast stalking towards you right now will have something else to say about that." In a flash, it turned from the warden's voice and looked her right in the eyes. She froze. Shit, it had been playing blind? "Not if I kill it first, you son of a bark." "Wait, no, stop. My name is Arines of Karamast, daughter of Dash." The world went white around her and she fell to her knees. She couldn't breath. She had to vomit but couldn't gag. Her hands flew to her throat as she gasped for air, frantically trying to roll away from Human as the looming man stalked towards her. She hadn't even seen what had happened. He had moved so fast. It had hit her hard in the throat, either with a punch or using its hand like a knife to jab or slash. It hadn't been as effective as clawed kick might have been, but it struck faster and would be no less deadly if it happened a second time. Regaining her bearings, she began scooting backside away from the man. With one hand she searched for bones and pulled herself along. With the other she massaged her almost useless throat. With her legs, she used one to push herself away, holding the other aloft but ready to kick out at Human's torso. "Please," she tried to croak, rubbing her throat, imploring the lunatic man. "Stop! Bark, arf, bark, bark." It danced around her, clearly wary of her clawed foot. She struck out, barely tearing its silk tunic as it dodged. She had been taught never to hit a gentleman, but she would definitely make an exception in his case. It pushed toward her from the side, and she moved back in equal measure. It hurt to breath, and she was fast running out of room to maneuver. She kicked again, and it dodged just as quickly. "My name, Arines," she wheezed again, her words sounding strangled. She had to explain that she was a person. Damn it, not some beast. "Daughter of Lady Jaraselka." This time the man lunged with his arm. She kicked at it and missed. She barely spotted the man's other arm as it tried to catch her foot. She rolled in place, bringing that extended foot to the ground while her other foot spun up to take its place, tearing deeply into the man's forearm. It barked in rage. She scooted back another 2 paces. "Dame Commander," she choked. What madness had come over this thing? Did it just like killing things? In her Imperial Majesty's order dash, she had slid her way right into a corner. The man had planned it that way, and she had played right into it. She was just another cornered animal, fighting for her life. Another lunge, another kick in response. She was ready for when he tried to catch her foot again, and kicked up with her other leg. This time she missed. The Human had caught her by the second foot. His other hand quickly grabbed her leg by the hock, seizing it firmly in place. In an instant he rolled to the ground, keeping his body on the side of her immobile leg, stopping her from kicking out with either. He fell atop her, releasing her leg as he landed. He rolled her chest first into the ground while she alternated between elbowing his ribs and stomach and using her fists to hammer at his thighs. Setting all decency aside in desperation, she tried to grab and tear at his manhood, but he kept his hips pressed firmly against her buttocks, leaving no room to strike. She tried another tactic, pushing herself off the ground. That only made things worse. Using the gap between her body and the floor, the man wrapped one arm around her entire body just beneath her bosom, locking her arms at her sides and crushing her torso into his. She began throwing her head backwards, fighting with every little scrap of energy and whatever tools she had left at her disposal. She felt gratified when the back of her head made contact with the man's odd nose, feeling it crushed as it made a soft crackling sound. It was odd. She had always enjoyed hand-to-hand combat. Were she not facing a certain and swift death, she might have admitted to finding the sensations of the hot-breathed gentleman holding her tightly, pressing his body into hers from behind to be mildly concupiscent. She normally preferred her gentleman to not be so forward, however, and not quite this big. Bark. Bark woof bark bayark. Boof, is said. The imp was gone. It had stopped translating his words, so it must not be translating hers either. That's why they couldn't understand each. The man's second arm joined the first, this time sliding up to her neck. The first hand then moved from her below her bosom to her forehead, preventing her chin from guarding her throat. With a roll, he was beneath her now, with both of them facing the ceiling. His legs snaked around hers, holding them down. He pressed in tight against her throat with his bleeding forearm and thick bicep, almost like a piece of wrought iron trying to remove her head. Her sight began flashing white again, this time starting at the edges. She could barely breathe as it was. But this was something else. An excruciating pressure built inside her skull. She was going to die in mere moments. Her soul would wander from star to star. She wanted to make peace with the Almighty in her last seconds, but she could only think of fighting. Fighting against this man-beast named human. Pointless. Sure, she was caught by surprise, but she honestly thought she would have stood a better chance. Instead, she was little more than a stupid slashing dummy. Not even a proper sparring partner for him. Barring. She immediately stopped all fighting and went limp, slapping his arm at her throat 3 times. Her vision was fully white now and she could not see. She could barely feel anything of her body beyond the arm at her throat. Would it understand? This was just a translation problem, right? This man had to be intelligent, not a killer or a monster or a lunatic. Had to be. In her final fading moments, she slapped his arm slowly, firmly, deliberately 3 more times. After the 3rd time, something happened. She could barely tell that the pressure on her neck was gone and her body had been shifted gently to the floor. Something soft had been placed under her head. The gentleman was no longer pressed against her. Though blurred, her vision began to return. She stared at the ceiling and blinked tears from her eyes. Human was crouching above her. Bark? Bark bark woof okay. It asked. My name is Lady Arenes of Karamast, she barely managed to whisper. Daughter of Lady Jeriselka, Dame Commander in Her Imperial Majesty's Order of the Sacred Guard, and I am not an animal. Arenes' head fell to the side as she lost consciousness.